You know, sometimes life whispers promises of a fresh start. That's exactly what I believed when Ethan came home one evening, wearing that charming smile of his, talking about a new beginning. He painted it so beautifully, a new city, new opportunities, and a clean slate for our marriage. "It's everything we need," he said. And for a moment, I wanted so badly to believe him. I told myself this is what love is sometimes, choosing trust, even when something deep inside trembles. So I did what so many women do when they believe in love. I sacrificed. I left behind the job I'd worked so hard to build, the friends who had become like family, and every little comfort that made life feel safe. It wasn't easy. God, it wasn't. But Ethan was so persuasive. "This will be good for us, for both of us," he kept saying, and I clung to that hope. That maybe, just maybe, this move would reignite something we'd lost. A reset. A real chance to heal. When we arrived, I won't lie, the neighborhood was lovely. Picture perfect, really. Rows of charming homes, friendly faces, little coffee shops on every corner. Ethan, he seemed different. Lighter. Almost energized. He threw himself into settling in, organizing, exploring, meeting people. But me, I couldn't shake this odd feeling. Like, beneath the fresh paint and new routines, there was this quiet hum of loneliness that clung to me. Still, I kept telling myself, it's just the adjustment. In the beginning, I tried. I really tried to settle in, to make this place feel like home. I'd spend my mornings exploring the neighborhood, popping into little shops, trying to create some kind of routine. But no matter how much I smiled at strangers or redecorated corners of the house, something always felt hollow, like I was a guest in someone else's life. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed to thrive. He was always busy, always somewhere, always occupied. I kept telling myself, it's just a phase, this is normal. New beginnings are supposed to feel uncomfortable. But sometimes, late at night, when the house got too quiet, I'd find myself staring at the ceiling wondering, did we really move for us, or was it for something else? I hated thinking that way. I hated how those little whispers of doubt crept in when I was alone. But they did. More often than I cared to admit. And yet, every time I voiced even the smallest concern, Ethan was quick with reassurance. "It's normal to feel unsettled," he'd say. "Give it time. You'll love it here." And for a while, I believed him. Or at least, I tried to. Because that's what you do, right? When you've shared years, memories, and promises with someone. You hold on. You convince yourself that the uneasiness will fade, that the cracks you're starting to notice are just shadows. But the thing about shadows, they have a way of growing when you least expect it. Little things started gnawing at me, the way Ethan would light up every time his phone buzzed, but somehow, never when I called, or how he'd step out for quick errands that turned into hours, coming back with vague explanations and that same tired excuse. Work stuff, you know how it is. Except, I didn't. Not anymore. Something felt different. Off. I tried brushing it off, telling myself I was overthinking, being paranoid, making mountains out of molehills. But deep down, there was this tiny, persistent voice whispering, "Pay attention." And the more I ignored it, the louder it got. It was in the way he avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions, in how his smile felt rehearsed, like he was playing the part of a loving husband, but his heart was already somewhere else. Still, I wasn't ready to face it. Not yet. Because admitting something was wrong meant admitting that everything I had sacrificed, everything I had left behind, might have been for nothing. So, I kept pretending, smiling, hoping, waiting for that feeling, that awful, sinking feeling, to go away. But deep down, I think a part of me already knew. I just didn't realize how much worse it was about to get. At first, it was subtle, easy to dismiss. Ethan started coming home later than usual. Meetings ran long, networking events, last-minute work stuff. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But when those nights started piling up, one after the other, something inside me shifted. I couldn't ignore how often I found myself alone at that dinner table, staring at his untouched plate, waiting, hoping, convincing myself this was just a busy season. Nothing more. Then there was his phone, always glued to his side, always face down, and locked, which wasn't unusual, except it hadn't always been locked. There was a time when we shared everything, no passwords, no secrets. But now, God, even when he went to the bathroom, that phone came with him. I tried not to let it get to me, but it was like a splinter under my skin. Small, but impossible to ignore. I remember one afternoon, we were driving around, exploring the neighborhood like we used to, laughing, holding hands, trying to pretend things were still okay. And then, we turned onto this random street, or at least, it seemed random to me, but not to Ethan. I felt it. The way his body tensed, the way he gripped the steering wheel just a little too tight. His eyes, fixed straight ahead, refusing to meet mine. And in that moment, something inside me whispered, "There's something here." From that day on, I started noticing patterns, things that were probably there all along, but I had been too blinded by trust to see. Ethan's late nights seemed to always line up with him being in one particular part of town. At first, I told myself it was just where his office was, or maybe a client, maybe. But the lies started unraveling faster than I could patch them. Every innocent question I asked was suddenly an interrogation to him. Every glance, every, "Hey, what time will you be home?" was met with defensiveness. He started getting snappy, dismissive. "Why are you always on my case?" Or, "You wouldn't understand. It's work stuff." Work. That word started tasting bitter every time it left his lips. It wasn't just the time he spent away. It was the energy. When he was home, it felt like he wasn't really there. Distracted, cold. Like I was living with a ghost of the man I married. Someone who used to make me feel safe but now made me feel like an outsider in my own life. And yet, I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You fight the storm, you hold on, even when the rope starts burning your hands. But deep down, deep down, I knew. I just didn't have the proof yet. But something was coming. I could feel it. I could feel it in my bones. The worst part? It was how effortless he made it all seem. The excuses, the gaslighting, the way he could look me dead in the eyes and say, "You're imagining things," like I was the one losing my grip on reality. But I wasn't. God, I wasn't. There's this heaviness, a kind of weight that settles in your chest when your instincts scream louder than the lies you're being fed. I felt it, every single day. And yet, part of me still clung to the version of him I used to know. The man who made me laugh until my stomach hurt. The man who once held my hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. But that man, he was slipping further away. And what terrified me the most was realizing I might have been the only one trying to hold on. Because Ethan seemed perfectly fine letting go. In fact, he was already halfway gone. I started watching more closely, paying attention to things I used to overlook. The change in his voice when certain names popped up. The sudden need for space after years of never needing it. And that one street, that same street that made his jaw tighten and his hands clench the wheel. It kept pulling at me, like a thread I wasn't supposed to tug, but I was about to. Because deep down, I knew that whatever I found, it was going to change everything. It's wild, how you can know something deep in your gut, but still pray you're wrong. That's exactly where I was, torn between trusting my instincts and desperately wanting to believe it was all in my head. But one night, one long, restless night, something inside me snapped. I opened our shared location app, the one we both used for years without thinking twice. My hands were shaking before I even tapped it, but there it was, his pin, sitting, still, for hours, right near an apartment complex. Not his office, not any place he'd ever mentioned. At first, I told myself, it could be anything. A client, a friend, maybe even a mistake. But the longer I stared at that little blinking dot, the louder that voice inside me screamed, "No, you know exactly what this is." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I felt sick, numb, but there was no turning back. I grabbed my keys, barely remembering to put shoes on. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew I needed to see. I drove there, barely breathing, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. I parked a few houses away, far enough not to be seen, but close enough. And then I waited. Minutes felt like hours. Every shadow, every figure that passed made my heart leap into my throat. And then, there he was, Ethan, walking out of that building like he owned the world, smiling, laughing, and holding someone's hand. But it wasn't just anyone. Oh no, it was someone I recognized. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, and for a terrifying moment, I wasn't sure if I was going to pass out or throw up. Because that woman whose hand he was holding so casually, was someone I knew. A face from our past. A face I never thought I'd have to see like this. A former coworker. Someone he'd once sworn had meant nothing. Someone he insisted he barely spoke to anymore. God. The lies. I just sat there. Frozen. Watching them. Watching him be the man I hadn't seen in months. Playful, affectionate, carefree. He wasn't tired. He wasn't stressed. No. He was alive. With her. The same man who'd come home to me hours earlier with that fake exhaustion, mumbling about work, pretending like his life was so heavy. But here he was, light as air, smiling like he didn't have a wife sitting at home, waiting, wondering, breaking. And in that moment, everything clicked. Every late night, every sudden meeting, every defensiveness. The move. Oh God, the move. It wasn't about us. It was never about us. He didn't drag me here for a fresh start. No, he dragged me here because she was here, because this was convenient, because starting a whole new life just happened to be easier when your wife was busy unpacking boxes, and your mistress lived 15 minutes away. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart was pounding, but my mind? Numb. Completely numb. I kept waiting for it to make sense, for there to be some explanation that didn't lead exactly where my gut already had. But there wasn't. No misunderstandings, no room for doubt. I was staring at the truth, ugly, cruel, and devastatingly clear. I watched them laugh, watched him open her car door like a perfect gentleman, watched him kiss her cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world. It was so rehearsed, so comfortable, like they'd been doing this for a long time. And maybe they had. God, how long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? Years? I sat there, feeling like a fool, a stupid, trusting fool who packed up her entire life for this. And somewhere between heartbreak and rage, something inside me shifted. I wiped the tears off my face, not because I was okay, but because I suddenly realized I wasn't the one who should be ashamed here. No, this wasn't my shame to carry. This wasn't my mess to clean. He built this. He chose this. And as painful as it was to admit, one thing was becoming clearer by the second. This wasn't going to break me. No, not a chance. I didn't explode. I didn't scream. Honestly, I think I scared myself with how calm I felt. There's something eerie about that kind of clarity. When pain burns so deep, it stops being fire and turns to ice. I drove home in silence. No music, no tears, just this laser focus pulsing through my veins. If he could play pretend, so could I. But this time, I wasn't pretending to hold things together. I was preparing to tear it all apart. The moment I walked through that door, everything felt different. The house, it wasn't home anymore. It was just a stage, a backdrop to the biggest lie I'd ever been sold. I grabbed my laptop, pulled up our shared location history, screenshot after screenshot, his pin, right there, next to her building, over and over again. Timestamps, dates, receipts. It was all right there. He hadn't even bothered to cover his tracks. Arrogant, lazy, or maybe he really believed I'd never be the one to look. Then I opened my photo gallery, scrolled to the pictures I'd just taken, him walking out of her place, holding her hand, looking like the happiest man alive. A perfect little collection of betrayal, evidence, proof. And as I sat there, staring at those images, something shifted. The sadness started to shrink, and in its place, determination. Because if he thought I was just going to fall apart quietly, oh, he had no idea who he was married to. When Ethan walked through that door later that evening, it was almost laughable. The same exhausted expression, the same "God, what a long day" sigh, the same fake smile he'd been wearing for months. I stood there watching him, wondering how many times I'd mistaken that face for truth. How many nights I'd waited, prayed, believed. But not tonight. Tonight was different. I waited. Let him settle in, let him pour himself a drink, let him pretend just a little longer, and then I placed everything on the table. My phone, the photos, the screenshots, every single lie laid out in full color. His face, oh, his face, I'll never forget it. The way every ounce of color drained from it. His eyes darted, from the photos to me, back to the photos, like a trapped animal. His mouth opened, but for a second, no words came, nothing, just panic. And then came the scramble. First, denial. This isn't what it looks like. Then, excuses. I was going to tell you, followed quickly by blame. You're spying on me? You went through my stuff? What's wrong with you? It was pathetic, predictable, like watching someone drown in their own lies and reaching for anything, anyone, to pull down with them. But I didn't flinch, not once. I looked him dead in the eye and said it, clear, cold, final. You didn't move us here for a fresh start. You moved us here to make it easier to cheat. He stood there, stunned, like someone had just punched the air out of his lungs. And you know what? For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one choking. I wasn't the one shrinking. I was steady, strong, watching him scramble, tripping over his own words, throwing out half-baked apologies, desperate explanations, reaching for anything that might soften the blow. But nothing he said landed. Not anymore. Because I wasn't there to fix this. I wasn't there to forgive.